the future of the nature of products and experiences is being decided and will be decided in the coming years and quarters with AI. Fundamentally, things are going to change and are changing. And customer insights, understanding what people really want, how they think about new experiences is so fundamental. And I think we need to make that be known. I think we've also got a responsibility to be maybe a little louder and say, like, we need to make sure this is part of the process as we're redefining our products and experiences for customers, for end customers. And I think to do that, though, we also need to work faster because the pace of decision making is only getting faster. AI is only, moving faster. We think about that a lot, is how can we help our customers be faster and move faster? And ultimately, I hope that enables user experience researchers and folks in the community to be able to provide faster, more relevant insights and really shape their cultures inside their organizations to really keep the customer at the center of all these hugely important decisions that are going to be made over the next year, 2, 3 years as we're figuring out the future.
Hey, everybody, it's Ben. Welcome to Awkward Silence. This very special episode. Excited to be joined by two guests who I'm confident will talk much more than me, although I say that on just about every pod. And then the AI at the output is like, you know what, Ben, here's a recommendation. Talk a little less. So I will do my very best to, because these folks have really excellent and long and far-reaching insights to share. My guests are Basel, the co-founder and CEO of User Interviews, now part of UserTesting. Basel, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And Baran, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at UserTesting. Baran, welcome, my friend. It's a great pleasure to meet you and take a little bit of your time today.
Great to be here, Ben. Thank you.
Now, our friends at UserTesting recorded a great conversation with these two. I've had to ply them with bonusly bucks, pecan bucks, all sorts of rewards and favors to get a little bit of their time. Our goal today is to be talking about high-level, industry-level insights. So if you're someone who thinks about market or consumer insights, or maybe you're a product leader, or maybe you're someone who thinks about strategy a lot, you likely use customer feedback and customer data and customer intelligence to make those decisions. This conversation will be of interest to you. We're going to be talking not just about the tech stack, but we're going to be talking about these various flows of data, how data get collected, aggregated, organized, and certainly made sense of, because these two guys spend a lot of time thinking about it, not granularly, which we often do on this podcast, talking about the practice of doing research. These guys think about how that research rolls up, how it can be useful to organizations, and how it can unlock new opportunity. So, guys, I was wondering if we could start as sort of a very quick state of union. Basel, I'm wondering if you could go first. You've been certainly thinking about the recruitment layer of research. You've been thinking about customer intelligence and insights generally. Give me a 1 to 3 sentence state of what are leaders thinking about vis-a-vis research? What are research leaders themselves or practitioners thinking about? Give us a sense of your sense of the industry today.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of change in the industry, which leads to sometimes challenges as well as a lot of opportunity. I think, obviously, the number one topic for the past 2 years now has been AI, right? So how does AI affect different parts of research practitioners' day-to-day job? But I think more interesting at maybe a higher level, and user testing, and us talk about this often, is that with AI, as it changes behaviors of users a lot, I think therefore the value of customer insights becomes bigger, right? When things aren't changing as much, you don't need as often fresh new insights because, the research you did previously kind of still holds. Whereas with huge kind of dislocations, the need for understanding your customers increases. So I think there's definitely an increase in the need of insights, but at the same time, I do think there is more pressure on budgets than there has historically been. So this is obviously putting pressure on the research team. So State of Union, once again, a lot of a need for insights. I think different companies are understanding that need more, and the winners, in my opinion, will be the ones that invest more in it. But also kind of pressure on the budgets overall across a lot of teams.
Yeah. And Baran, you sit in and currently and have sit on strategies and corporate and development roles. You think very long term. Not that Basel doesn't, but you're a Horizon 3 thinker. You have to peek around the corner so that you can steer the corporate and business ship where it ought to be going. It feels like this moment with artificial intelligence really means that folks want to pull. I'm going to really lean into this maritime metaphor. Let's see if I can do it. We really want to go like full steam ahead into artificial intelligence and synthesis of insights quickly. But I imagine for a strategy person like you probably think like, wait a second. I need to make sure I'm looking before I leap. So historically, both at your time at UserTesting and at previous roles, how did research feed into or influence what it is that you and your teams did?
Yeah, Ben, one consistent thing from the past to now and the future, I think, is successful companies or customer-centric companies. And at all the companies I've worked at, the ones that have been the most successful and the most fun to work at have just had that in the DNA.
Yeah.
And sometimes we've had to reinforce that, maybe coming in as a new leader.
Sure.
That is a consistent thing that will not change amidst all this change. In that, I think insights that are really backed by data and quality insights backed by quality data are things that, people like me and, working with the CEOs I've worked with are super helpful and are I would say necessary as we're making like the high stakes long-term decisions. Like you said, I mean, we work on the near term, but we think about the long term and need to have an idea of where we're going in 3 or so years. That's kind of in technology. You can't think too much farther than that.
Sure. Yeah. Good point.
And I mean, we shouldn't be making tons of decisions. We should be making a few high stakes decisions, and those, we should have a lot of confidence behind. So the more data, the more customer insights we can have behind those, the better. And I think this moment, Basel talked about the AI kind of era that we're in. It's even more uncertain, even the next 6 months. And so it's even more critical, I think, the practice that we're all in around customer insights.
And so as someone who hasn't had the privilege, because nothing would get done, to be in the meetings about setting strategy, I'm the cartoon character or the sort of joker they bring in to tell some jokes. And this is a question for both of you, how do executives think about balancing that risk versus reward? That first mover advantage, you want to innovate, broadly defined, but you also want to be careful with one's resources, whether that's talent or technology. So Basel, I'll throw it over to you. How have you and, for example, your co-founders, Dennis and Bob, think about that dialectic between like, hey, we have a hunch about this space and we want to be very careful about, our resources broadly defined. How do you think about that? What's your sort of framework for thinking about those sorts of moments?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I want to say we've been super consistent always, but I think the way I like to think about it is you never necessarily need to, or we have historically never felt like we need to dive right in right away, right? There's iterative steps you can do, right? There are experiments, there are goals, there's research you could be doing
Sure.
across. And I think it should be an iterative process that compounds over time. And as you kind of learn more, have more success, then you can allocate more and more resources to it. So I think generally a lot of things kind of, strategic decisions we've made have started with a small team doing an MVP or testing it out after doing research. And then based off the success or lack of success on that, we determine, hey, what's the next step there? So that's kind of how we tend to balance it. Always driven by customer insights, what we're hearing from customers, but then doing it in a very iterative process.
Baran, how about for you? How have you handled that pull in either direction of innovate but consolidate?
It really depends on the culture around decision making and leadership in the organization. The best ones, I think, really have a test and learn culture.
Okay.
They're rapid learning machines, and that goes for startups, that's a fundamental requirement for a startup. You got to learn and iterate and find product market fit, or else you don't succeed.
Yeah,
I think something Basel and team did really well with user interviews, obviously, but also for larger companies. You're making bigger bets. You're making large resource allocation decisions. If you have the culture of testing and learning, and I would say what we do with consumer insights is an example, a manifestation of that kind of culture of getting data, getting feedback, getting input to then make decisions, try things out, and then continuing that iterative loop. If you have that, you just make smarter decisions. You are often right more than you are wrong. And if you don't have that culture, there are other ways. There are, hey, the CEO or some leader's gut, right? And I mean, gut, I don't, gut can be right. And as you get experience, it's actually, it's wise to listen to it. But you don't want that to be the exclusive kind of decision-making culture. And so the balance there is really important. I've always tried to talk with my teams and organizations around building that learning culture so that we're making the best informed decision we can. Because, ultimately, the rate of decision making is important, and then the rate of kind of correct decisions is also important.
I'm so grateful that each of you said that test and learn, iterative sort of rolling approach, because I think too often, I'm going to use just insights, folks. If you're a researcher or a product person, you know who you are out there. If you're doing something where you're collecting data to try to make a decision, I think, and I fall prey to this, too often we think I need to deliver the thing, and then they're either going to do the thing or not do the thing. This bimodal toggle. But I love that each of you are describing it as a dial. We're going to turn it up to 2 to see, Basel, for example, we have been playing with a lot of artificial intelligence in helping our customers find the right participants for their projects. Now, we didn't just shove a bunch of AI in front of them without doing, thoughtful consideration about how that might disrupt or make better their workflows. We did incremental, tested, and then reflected. And Baran, it sounds like even at the more executive C-suite level, that can happen. And so I want to encourage our listeners to remember that Tiger teams are valuable. User interviews and user testing makes great use of them. Get together the smart folks who are curious about the thing, see what's possible. You don't need to deploy all of the budget for a quarter or year. Take a little bit, make the case. I think this is a nice reminder for researchers and insights folks to, be curious. And these 2 executives are themselves curious.
Yeah, I think moving fast and executing fast is incredibly important, and maybe the most important thing for a startup to be successful. That is different than being the first mover. I actually think being the first mover is a little bit overrated. Like, I don't think you necessarily need
Say a little more.
I think you should be continuously moving fast, continuously building, continuously testing and iterating, and executing on a vision relentlessly. But that doesn't mean that, like, if there's this new shiny product or market to move into, that being the first one to have a full suite in that project or even a full product in that market is going to determine who's the winner or not, right? I think it's much more important to have this kind of culture of moving quickly. That doesn't mean you need to jump all the way in and be the first person in the market. I think, historically, a lot of times, second, third, fourth movers are the winners of markets. We see this all the time. So I think, to your point, like, there are a lot of trade-offs, right? You can be moving fast against other things. So when you choose to go move fully into a new thing, you are moving slower in the other things. That's why they're not necessarily one-to-one.
I want to say, and Baran, I have a question about how you mentioned decision culture a few times. I want to revisit that idea. One of the things that, Basel, I really appreciate and have appreciated during my time at User Interviews is your penchant for reminding us why we're here. You regularly remind us what the mission is, what we're doing. You call it kind of our scoreboard metrics. You start every single all hands with, here's what we're doing and here's how we're doing against it. I, as someone who's on the sort of go-to-market team, I have always appreciated that. Even though I know it, I just like to be told it. And so I think that it helps filter and render intelligible a lot of the things, the bets we might be making. Baran, you've mentioned now decision culture. I imagine when you're dropped in or you are integrated into a leadership team or you're brought on board to maybe a new org or department, there's an existing culture there. And I expect that with technology, artificial intelligence among it, the tech will get easier and faster to build. And we're still people building stuff for other people.
Yeah.
And I think culture makes the difference. It can help us foreshadow authenticity. It can help us create great connections with customers, and it can help us learn. So a very long way of asking, how do you and your team think about that decision culture? What are some of the things that you have found successful to help either build openness, build curiosity, build honesty, the things that I think you have said before make for a successful business? How do you stoke that? How do you make that possible?
Culture, the saying culture kind of starts at the top, and you talked about, how Basel some of the ways he helped shape the culture at user interviews very successfully. And I think a lot of it is the actions of leaders. Things like a sense of urgency that drives then a sense of fast decision making, and then that kind of filters down to all the things you need to do to make the decision, whether it is user experience research or some data analysis or whatever it is. So just bringing a sense of urgency. I wholeheartedly agree with what Basel said. Like, speed of decision making, probably the number one determining factor in success. There's actually studies around that. You can read from high paid consulting firms. But that's one, I think, sense of urgency. And then two, the questions, that you ask in those meetings, whether it's leaders or anyone in the meeting around, how do we know, why do we believe that might be true? A direction that somebody's proposing, that we go, and, the rigor that you kind of ask for, but balancing that with speed. So there's like a natural tension. You could say, well, you want to move fast, but you want to have evidence, you want to have insights. Well, if I have more time, I'll get more evidence, more data.
Always.
Insights. So it's a natural tension. It's a healthy tension, and that's part of leadership and being thoughtful about that culture of how you manage both of those to ultimately good outcomes.
Basel, anything to add there?
No, wholeheartedly agree. And I think one thing that I've like now that user interview is part of user testing and seen a lot of similarities in the culture, as you talked about how I will start the all hands with what we're doing and how we're doing against them. And I think user testing makes these one pagers on, hey, here are the values, this is the strategy, this is what we're trying to do. And I think Eric and Baran have talked, Eric the CEO and Baran have talked about laminating them and like sending them out, right? So it's always just kind of like in front of your face at all times, because even if you can recall it on your own, if someone asks you, it's different about it being there. So
yeah, and I appreciated just this week, Eric said that they have fewer than, like, I think there are 3, forgive me, I'm already failing the quiz, but that they choose fewer of them so that they can be memorable. Eric said that they're not going to help if there's 50 of them. He won't remember them. He won't be able to advocate for them, and won't be able to surface them both in executive leadership meetings or in, meetings with cross-functional stakeholders. So yeah, I too have appreciated the clarity of those values. And I think that is probably something that founders need to keep in mind. We can get, obsessed with, rightfully so, the tech, what we're building, even rightfully the customer. But I think the rationale for it, that can feed so much into what you're doing. The marketing, the message that you're trying to share, certainly your roadmap, what you're building, and then the ways in which you do it. That ought to come from, and I've had the pleasure of working with some great founders. They usually have that fire, that thing that's really driving them, whether it's to solve a specific problem or to do so in a particular way. So I commend each of you and your orgs on that, because it's been, for me as an IC, it's motivating. I would be remiss to not ask. Oh, Baran, please.
Yeah, Ben, I want to jump in there.
Please.
Just around clarity and simplicity. We're talking about clarity and simplicity and kind of sharing company strategy and culture. But I think it's super relevant for like our community, our audience, in user experience research. Ultimately, we are trying to influence decisions, right? And trying to bring customer insights into decision making, into the room, right? I think one kind of key thing for folks, because you were asking about how do leaders make decisions, is clarity and simplicity are key, especially when you're talking to executives. The attention span of executives is short and getting shorter as we're all dealing with like the pace of change and all this AI stuff. The bottom line up front, bluff kind of methodology, like that's so important to have the key point, the key message be really clear, really upfront, and then it can be supported with all the information, all the amazing kind of supporting work and research that's been done. But like the so what is so important because we have limited capacities, all of us as humans, to absorb information, to remember it, to act on it. And that's why we do at user testing, like the one pager strategy on a slide. Very simple. 3 core values. Very simple. We want it to be memorable and actionable. And so I would say the same thing for all of our community members is remember that, because ultimately, if you all the greatest research in the world isn't going to make a difference if it's not going to be acted on.
Yeah. And that was going to be my question to you is each of you has been in high stakes meetings, or you make decisions, lots of decisions each day, each week. And so much of what I spend my time thinking about is how I can educate, train, up level insights professionals to inform those decisions more effectively. And I think, Baran, to your point, we can sometimes get bogged down with like, okay, just pick one number or pick the very best quote or get the video. But I like what you're saying, that it's like, what do you want them to take away? What is the so what from all the excellent work you've done, whether it was multi-networked focus groups or a whole host of quantitative studies that you've compiled into something? What is it that you want this person, an executive in this case, to take away? But for you, is there, I mean, you've said attention span's shorter, is there a kind of data that you like, I guess? What do you like to see when you're being delivered insights or a report or deliverable? What helps you make that decision?
That is a great question. So one, the structure. So that's what I was kind of talking about before. Very simply, and folks can look it up online if they're not familiar, but there's the pyramid kind of principle around storytelling or around presenting in a business context. And you can have a pyramid the way we think about it, or you can have it upside down. And the two different approaches are: you start with the headline, the key message, and then you have supporting data points after it. Or it could be the other way. Hey, there's data point A, data point B. We've learned C, we've learned D. Therefore, we should do this. The first is more effective with executives. Start with, we should do this. And then if you have questions, I can tell you about A, B, C, and D and show you what we've learned. I would say that structure is the most important thing. So you don't lose the room, lose the executives. And then I would say really relevant, grounded research and insights. That's honestly a mix of qualitative and quantitative. I've seen be very, very effective. You have to think about the audience, and everyone's different, and we process things differently. Some people tend to be very quantitative processors and thinkers, and some, more qualitative, and just like a single video will really sway that person differently than someone else. So you want to think about the audience, and there's probably a mix of thinkers there. And so a complementary kind of blend is, I've seen, be quite effective. And then just, again, being humans, and where where humans and faces and voices resonate so strongly, like actual video proof, some research clips that I've seen in rooms be so effective, is powerful. It can't be the only thing, but it can really, be a powerful supporting data point.
Yeah, totally agree with all of that. I would say the one thing, at least personally, that is also helpful to me is sometimes you get a great insight, but you're not sure what to do with it. So when that is paired with, hey, here are some suggested action items for, I think marketing should do this, or hey, can we fit this into the road? Or as we're thinking through pricing, we should do that. I think kind of tying the insight to more specific action items, because sometimes, as an executive, in some ways you have less, you have a lot of influence, but you're not actually doing a lot of the day-to-day stuff. So showing how does this trickle down, I think is useful, as opposed to a very useful insight or a very important insight, but you're not quite sure how to action on it or what.
In addition to all the various things I've been writing and seeing and researching about how we can, as researchers, better use whatever tools available, the other biggest piece of, or most frequently delivered piece of advice that I give is know your context, know your stakeholders, know your business, know your industry. And so both Baran and Basel, you're hinting at that. How might marketing use what it is you're going to recommend? Is what you're going to share to your chief strategy officer even really doable? Have you asked yourself the extent to which there's a feasibility component? Do you know the room? Do you know your audience? And so I appreciate that each of you are selfishly saying things that, we are hearing in the market that researchers have a great set of tools, but it's not devoid of the context in which you work. Even if you're working at an agency and you're supporting customers and clients that way, or if you're in-house and you're sort of embedded in this sense of an organization, you should know that. And I think it speaks to what each of you said earlier, that clarity, the reminder of the values. The reason I expect that an executive does that is that that'll trickle down to the ICs and throughout the organizations broadly so that they know what we're working on and why. That's why OKRs are so popular. It helps us at the IC level know what it is that we're working on and why it's valuable.
Well said, Ben.
Yes. Trying to do my best. Basel, I want to turn to you because you there are often builders of companies who listen to awkward silences. There are lots of companies being built, which is excellent for the market. We have lots of competition, lots of new ideas. Advice for a founder in 2026, something that maybe you and your founders wish you knew when you started either UI or mobile suites. Certainly I'll drop the our founding story where we have the great anecdote about doing research and how it would have helped sooner. What other advice would you give to a founder today who's got a burning idea and an interest to make something of it?
Yeah, kind of, reflecting what Baran said earlier, matters at the founder level, which is, I think matters even more when you have no brand, no lock-in is, I think just obsess with the customers, obsess about the customers, right? Just do non-scalable things, and just really, really focus on making the customers happy. And what I will kind of pull on that thread is, I think that's easier to do when you have a focused customer base. So I often recommend to founders, like, cut down your initial market to as narrow and niche as possible, because it's hard to break above the noise, right? Like, if you're solving the fourth most important problem for 1,000 people, that's less good than solving the first most important problem for 10 people. And you can move into other things over time. But when you have no brand, very little product, you really, really need to focus on a sharp pain point, and to understand that you have to keep the customers close, and to be able to solve that for enough customers, they need to have the same problem. You can't solve multiple problems for multiple people. So I really focus on narrowing down who you're talking to, and like get as narrow and niche as possible, and then really solve that, then figure out how you can expand from there.
Baran, how about for you? Either something that strategy officers or teams need to do more of, or something that you wish you knew when you began your executive career?
I think this will be nothing new to folks, but it's the more experience I get, the older I get, the more I realize it is maybe the most important thing, and that would be work with great people, find the best people that you can, hire the best people that you can. And I think, as a founder, like at the early stages, it's one of the absolute most important things you can do. As a small team, every individual that comes on board the team has huge impact on the future, the culture, the talent level, the future trajectory of the business. And that's something that Basel, Dennis, and Bob clearly did a great job of as I'm meeting more new team members. So that would be my advice.
When we look at the research space, and again, broadly defined, but let's focus for a second on research tooling, these systems and platforms and experience solutions that help practitioners do the stuff we're talking about. Filter and figure out what customer feedback is worth collecting, make some sense of it, and then deliver it in a decision-driven way. What do you think the landscape will, or Basel, I'll start with you because you spend a lot of time, Baran, not that you don't, but Basel, I've heard you muse and think about and write about and present about the landscape of tooling, broadly defined for getting insights to decision makers. How will that landscape look differently at the end of the year than it does now? And it already has shifted quite a bit. What do you expect will happen by the end of the year if we were to do this pod on December 23rd, toward the end of the year?
I mean, it's always hard to put, exact times on
Sure.
changes.
Big
What do
asterisk.
they
Big
things go
asterisk.
slower in a year than you expect, but faster in 5 years, or something like that
Yeah.
phrase. Look, I mean, it's the boring answer, but AI is everywhere, right? I think we're seeing an explosion in AI moderated tools, right? Dozens of them there. I think, the market's going to continue to explore this, and I assume that there will be new insights in how they work, right? Like right now, they're very much just mirroring a person. They're new. Sorry, let me take a step back. Like when you think about technology, the first thing it usually does is mirror the previous world, right? So like the Web 1.0 was taking text, which you had physical, and putting it online, right? And then as Web 2.0 comes out, you're like, oh, now we can actually have different functionality we didn't necessarily think of, right? So I think a lot of the AI stuff in research is in that kind of 1.0 stage, where it's there's moderators and there's participants. Let's put AI on both of them. So it's that synthetic users on one side and AI moderation on the other side. I don't think we're right at the 2.0 stage yet. And I expect that by the end of the year, we'll start seeing some more. Oh, this isn't just like using AI to replace or supplement what had previously been happening. This is like a new way to do insights or to do research there. So I think we'll start seeing some more interesting stuff by the end of the year. Not that what's already here isn't interesting. And then I think another thing too is I think there is going to be. I've actually been a believer in this for a long time, although I would say it's happened slower than I expected. But I do think we're going to see like there's no reason insights for product teams and marketing teams need to be separate. There's no reason like data needs to be separate from your qual versus quant needs to be separate. I think over time, like we are trying to have better information to make better decisions for different parts of the business and through different ways. And I think there will continue to be more ways all of those interact with each other. And I've been saying that for like 5 years. I remember Vibio's insights team had like the analytics team and the research team all in one insights team. And I was like, everyone's going to do this. It hasn't happened yet, but I still believe that that is the future. So maybe we'll see more of that this year.
I hope so. Baran?
I've heard, yeah, on that last point, what we see, and we work with lots of large companies, we see they are distinct teams in market research or consumer insights on one side and UX and product research on the other, but they know each other. They may share some best practices, connect from time to time. There is, I think, the potential for you to be right now, Basel, actually helped by AI. I've heard some others posit this of like what these teams are now finding is they're both looking into all the AI tools because we all are, and we're all trying to figure out what we can do with this new magic. And they're realizing that they're both looking at similar things or the same kind of tooling, and then that's a kind of natural business reason enforcing function to maybe work more closely together on that search or consider working more closely together going forward. So I think the jury's still out, but it's an interesting kind of time driven by all the searching that everybody's doing with AI. I think Ben, I do think people do on the broader question of like the landscape and tooling. I think people are, what we hear from customers is they would like maybe to have less, not 10 tools, but a handful or less, and to be able to really have partners they can work with. Not just as like a tool vendor, but as a true partner, help them also with services or thinking about best practices, especially again because things are changing so fast, and vendors and tool providers, just see lots of companies, work with lots of companies, and so I do think there is a desire to be able to do more with fewer tools in the toolbox.
Yeah. Just this week, I heard two things which are exemplary of what you're both discussing. I was talking to, unnamed, a senior researcher at a large media company that was just merged with another media company. And this person was describing how there's such an energy about combining the shared knowledge, but that sometimes the actual systems by which they're doing their work can get in the way. So, Basel, I think you're right, and Baran as well, that AI can facilitate some of those. This researcher said they kind of have like an underground insights sharing system. Not that leadership wouldn't want them sharing what they know, but there is yet to be those formal bridges built. So I am very interested to see how democratization, broadly defined, helps various teams, market teams, innovation teams. There's lots of, CPG companies that have an entire innovation center that doesn't exactly talk to the user experience folks, but for whom that synergy, yes, I said it, would be so valuable to the OKR, the bottom line, the customers, whatever it is that the mission is. And so I'm eager to see how technology helps smooth some of those roads or make possible some of those connections. Because you're right, Baran, there's so much energy with researchers on one side, customer innovation folks on the other to share and learn. It makes everyone's job easier. And I think, and that leads me to my last sort of section here with the both of you, is that what each of you as leaders have learned about, and I know we're still in the midst of the integration between user testing and user interviews, but as folks who are executives there, I'm curious what you've learned and what you're eager to bring. And so, Basel, I'll start with you. What is user interviews bringing to user testing, and what are you learning as an executive through this process of integration and combination?
So on the first one, and Baran, I think you'll agree. I think number one thing is I do think we are regarded as the best panel in the world for research, right? And I think bringing that in is incredibly important or valuable for user testings, clients and customers. And there's a lot of synergies with that as well. Um, and then also, we have a lot of the same clients. They've been asking for this, like deeper integrations. Uh, we we were looking through the list of people who have requested that, and it's a nice list.
That's
So
a
I think
great signal too. To your point about signals for making a decision, that's a nice signal.
yeah, exactly. But I've learned a bunch. I mean, like my career has been at user interviews, right? And that has started from me, Bob, and Dennis, and over time, grown to 140 people. So the job has definitely changed. The market has definitely changed, but it's all been at one company. So I think every, every day I'm learning a lot on a personal level, like decision making frameworks, leadership, communication, all of that. I'm kind of soaking that in, being able to see more experienced leaders there. And then from a company building perspective, it's just great to see the when you have scale, the resources you can bring to your customers, to your decision making. We talk about strategy, and one thing I've noticed is we would have a much more narrow strategy at user interviews because we could only execute on a couple things. Baran talks about strategy, and it's a lot of the same ideas we had, but it's like, hey, we're going across multiple ones at the same time. So that's super fun to see that. And then also what that can allow for the customers as well, right? I think even just from a services perspective, right? Like there's I don't know 50 something user researchers that are there helping their own helping the at user testing, helping the
Hmm.
user
Yeah.
customers, the advocacy and partnership at the senior level to help the end users, get that budget and continue to kind of advocate for them. So it's really cool to see kind of how the scale of a vendor can actually then go support the buyer and the end user and really be a champion for them within their org as well.
That's got to be exciting to have that scale and that energy and efficiency. Baran, how about from your side? What is it like? What has it been like working with the UItes, as we call ourselves, and what are you eager to roll out to our shared customers and certainly our new ones?
The first thing I've learned is how awesome so many UItes are. I got to know Basel pretty well, but not too many more members of the team, and it's just been phenomenal for the last 2 weeks getting to know team members. I think two things that stand out are one, the craft of the craft towards product and the whole operation and company building that Basel and the team have in terms of product experience, the operations around the recruit and the marketplace that is a panel that is really complex to operate, and just how the how the business has been run. It's just very thoughtful. I think that's the word I'd use, and that's probably a big reason for the team's success. And then, Basel, you talked about scale. What I love seeing is like also just the speed, speed you all have in decision making, in doing things, making change happen. Like I already see it in discussions and on Slack. We talk about something like, all right, we're gonna do it now, or Bob will like update, the product very quickly. Bob, the CTO, and I love that. I mean, I think we work pretty fast at user testing, but naturally, as you grow, as an organization gets bigger and you have more people, it's hard to keep up that pace. And so it's wonderful to get this just like infusion of energy and speed back, into the organization that I think is going to be great for customers and team members.
Yeah, I have been at a few offsites where Bob and some of our tech team hear a thing, and maybe our customer success team will be reading out something, and Bob will be like, okay, well, let's go ahead and fix that. And I see I can see him clanking away with maybe Jeff. Shout out to Jeff, one of our architects, working on that. It is great. And I know I will say, as someone who's been a customer of both user interviews and user testing, I've always appreciated the human element. I mean, shouts to Nabil and the operations team at user interviews. There are lots and lots of really great human hours to try to make that matching successful. Yes, we have excellent automated intelligence technology and lots of great tech structures to make that stuff automated, and there are humans there reviewing. And similarly at at UserTesting, I know, Leanne, and there's a great managed services team. There's a wonderful group of experts there to help teams who maybe have, I don't want to say maturity, but are looking to up-level their research savviness. And so it's the technology of UserTesting, but there's also the people to help you. So I think that's a nice combination. I would, as any good interviewer, I need to ask, what did I not ask that you want to make sure we get to? We've got a couple of minutes left. I don't often get two executives in my sandwich here. Basel, I'll start with you. You've been, doing a lot of discussions, doing a lot of thinking. Is there something that you want to make sure you share and that folks hear from you?
I'll just say the one thing I think with the acquisition is I think there's been a lot of questions about what does that mean for the user interviews product. And, I think the one thing just we've been reiterating from the whole process from when we first talked is this is very number one thing is being customer centric. And, part of that means meeting people where they are. So definitely people can still buy user interviews directly and, use those participants or Research Hub however they think makes sense. And we'll obviously be investing in making the integration with UserTesting as amazing as possible so that people choose to do that over time, but everyone will always have the flexibility to use user interviews directly.
Great. Baran, how about for you?
I would say thinking about kind of the current moment we're in and this age of AI that we are in and executives on down to everyone in an organization is thinking about. I think as a research community, whether you're in a team at an organization, whether you work for a software company like we do, whether you're an agency, we have, I think, a great opportunity and we have an important role to play in this moment where the future of products, the future of the nature of products and experiences is being decided and will be decided in the coming years and quarters with AI. Fundamentally, things are going to change and are changing. And customer insights, understanding what people really want, how they think about new experiences is so fundamental. And I think we need to make that be known. I think we've also got a responsibility to be maybe a little louder and say, like, we need to make sure this is part of the process as we're redefining our products and experiences for customers, for end customers. And I think to do that, though, we also need to work faster because the pace of decision making is only getting faster. AI is only moving faster. I think we need to be able to move faster. And so, at least from a product software company perspective, vendor perspective, like we think about that a lot, is how can we help our customers be faster and move faster? And ultimately, I hope that enables user experience researchers and folks in the community to be able to provide faster, more relevant insights and really shape their cultures inside their organizations to really keep the customer at the center of all these hugely important decisions that are going to be made over the next year, 2, 3 years as we're figuring out the future.
Wonderful. Well, I will volunteer now on record to be the volume booster if needed. You can always tag me in, bosses,
awesome.
if we need some more volume. Baran, Basel, thank you so much. Your time is valuable, and I've really enjoyed learning a ton. I've been taking notes, as the viewers can probably see. Next time, we will talk ACC basketball. We've got Wolfpack and Blue Devils on the call. I'm looking at the live standings. Duke is undefeated in the league, but it's early, and the Wolfpack are 4-2. So we will check back in. I may have to have even these fellas further apart from one another. But Baran, Basel, congratulations. I'm so excited to be a teeny tiny part of this, and I'm looking forward to making this a success for all of our teams and all of our customers. Thanks, fellas.
Ben, thanks so much. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks, guys.
And this was a lot of fun.
Of course.